out, guys. Super excited to be spending some time with you. Yeah. So Heather and Landy are probably, in my opinion, some of the most tenacious duo in the business that we've met in a long time.
Agreed.
So the thing I love most about them is their care and their concern and the way they work together. They've kind of, I feel like, mastered some strengths where one is strong in one area, one's strong in another area, kind of like us, you know, and have really started playing to that. And I think that's why we've seen their promotion to their broker position faster than anybody else we've seen in our office. So it's pretty awesome. So anyway,
Awesome.
love you guys.
Well, we love you guys.
That's actually one of our questions that we were wondering about, is sometimes we feel like that we haven't identified necessarily what strengths are. And so how do you learn or figure out as a power couple who's better at something and how to support them and develop those characteristics in a partner?
I think Deanne's the master at this one.
It's not true. But we get asked that all the time, and I think the very, very first thing we did was we wrote down our qualities of each other, but what we saw in ourselves and what we saw in each other. Okay, so if you guys have never done that, I would write down a list of all the traits that you feel like you possess. And so they're not necessarily tasks, like that type of thing, but what are my strengths that I possess? What are the strengths that I see in Chris? And then we got together and we compared those. But then, because of those certain strengths, if someone's really good at talking to people, you know, they're probably a better prospector. Maybe someone's really good at moving people forward, they're a better field trainer. You know, there's not a lot of things that we, though, said that that's your job and I'm going to never do it.
Right.
Because being in the game like you guys are, it is about both of you guys knowing the benefit, at least, the power of it is knowing start to finish how to do everything. Yes, he's a better prospector because I have chosen to not work on that, right? But it's something I still have to get better on. And he would state that I'm a better referrer only because I've chosen to ask the question more, okay? And so I think a lot of times how we've been able to pick who's going to do what or what their main focus has been is what they're naturally gifted at, what is their natural talents, and they may have to work on that. We both hate contacting. Okay, we hate it the same, but someone has to do it.
Right.
Really?
I know, well, maybe he hates it even more than me. I don't know.
That's what I figured, but
Because I realize it just has to get done. So I guess I don't complain about it or run away from it as much. Does that make it a strength of mine? I wouldn't say that. But I would also say that, you know, we tried it both ways. We tried me just being the only contact person, but that didn't work because he had relationships with other people, and when I contacted him, it wasn't the same.
yeah.
And so we both had to come to terms with, like, we just both have to make contacts.
Right.
And so maybe one of us is more, I believe he's a better leader in the field as far as getting people to do things on their own. Can I get a result in the field? Of course. Can this guy move people faster? I believe so, based on his results. Okay? And so I think for us, it was really creating those strengths, coming together, and then saying, this is what I see in you, this is what I see in myself. And then on the other side, we had a whole list of every task that had to be done, even from back office stuff. What is everything that has to be done? What can we delegate? And what are we best at? You guys are going to make the money. No one you can delegate that to. Any money-making task has to be done by you guys, but you only have so much time.
Right.
And so it's about identifying what are the tasks we should be doing, which would be the field training and being in person, and delegating everything else to free up more time. And so we just compared strengths with tasks that had to be done. And then a lot of times, maybe if it goes back to that minimum standard, he still has to have a minimum standard of contacts, even if I take the bulk of that on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I still take on the bulk of who we bring into the business, but he's still got to help and contribute that way.
Right.
And so we put our goals down, and then based on our goals, this is what we got. Based on our goals, we decide what effort I'm going to do, right?
So I think one of the things that, for me, and we haven't really talked a lot about this, but I think one of the things for me is there's definitely definable strengths, and I have definable strengths that Deanne has, and we try to play to those as much as possible, but also to the same token of that is I try not to allow that she's stronger at something to give me the reason why I don't need to get better at it. So what I feel like I try to do with I feel like I try to do it with everything. I'm probably not nailing it all over the place, but I feel like my goal is to get strong at all of it, right? So what that, then instead of giving the dynamic of, well, that's your responsibility, and her looking at me and saying that that's my responsibility, it no longer allows me to say that, because it is my responsibility to get better at the things that I'm not very good at, right? And so because that's the attitude, I don't ever just get to look at her and say, well, why didn't you do it? Because the reality is, if I'm trying to get stronger and better at it, and I'm taking personal ownership and accountability for it myself, one of the things that we figured out is that I don't need her to hold me personally accountable for what I'm supposed to do, and she doesn't need me to hold her personally accountable. What we got to get good at is holding each other personally accountable for what we've decided that we're going to do, and still become personal accountable for what it is that we're weak at, that we need to get better at too. And because we have that dynamic, what that I think eventually equates to is I'm going to try my hardest to get it done, and at the end of the week, if I didn't get it done because it was due to weakness, she probably did get it done because it's a strength, right? And I just keep working on that every week. So instead of it like just being, I'm only going to do what I'm strong at and she's only going to do what she's strong at, what ends up happening is that we both try to do whatever we can do to our fullest. And at the end of the week, if I didn't get it done, it was probably got done because she picked it up and did it, or it was one of the things that she was just nailing that week. And so just like the building of the matchup, right? Like many weeks she does it. There's been many weeks that I've done it, but today is kind of an example where, okay, like there was a little bit of like a, would you say struggle, concern, not sure how to put it together.
Yep.
And so I just kind of picked it up and did it, right? And so it's just kind of like, did she ask me? She just voiced that she had a concern. Now, maybe she's a little upset because I didn't ask for more information and I just did it. But the reality is it's going to get done, right?
Right.
And so I take on a personal responsibility for everything. She takes on a personal responsibility for everything. And those two personal responsibilities and us utilizing our strengths and knowing what's better, who's better at what, in the end we get it all done. So.
And when he says for everything, he means our goals. So like if we're falling behind on goals, just like you were talking about earlier, like, okay, we have our goals on the board, this is what we have to get done, right?
Right.
So then we're always communicating in the middle of the week, where are we at with this? What do you think, what else do you think you can do this week? And he may be struggling, like, even if we have to hit a certain amount of points, you know, we have a standard that we gotta help a certain amount of families or have a certain amount of production, right? And so I may ask him, what do you have? What do you have going on this month? Do you have anything there? And then it allows me to see if he's going to be able to hit that kind of in my mind. Do I need to work harder to be able to make sure that we hit our ultimate goal, which is how much money are we making? How many people are you bringing into the business? And so we're always keeping on each other in the sense of like, where are we at towards that?
Okay.
And so it's not that we have specific tasks, but yeah, one of us is usually heading up something over the other. Like I'm definitely more of the relationship person. People need help planning, people need help understanding, or brand new people need more nurturing, right? I've kind of taken on that role because I'm more patient. That would be a trait.
Really?
I'm like, then maybe him, right?
Something that you do really well, I think both of you do this really well, and my question was regarding couples, but I think it actually applies to everybody. How do you build up your partner, but anybody on your team, and continue to pour belief in them and help expand their dreams when you're struggling yourself, when you're tired and you're stressed and you're stretched thin? How do you keep
Maintain
giving?
the belief.
Yes. How do you give to others when you feel empty?
Love it. Do you want to start?
You start.
Okay. I've started every question, but okay. Thanks.
Ladies first.
Ladies
Thanks,
first.
babe. Okay, I think that where you build that habit is actually being a mom. I think it goes back to your family, and I love how you were like, well, with your husband, with your family, with your agents, because it's all the same.
It is.
But that's where it comes from when you have to give when you have nothing. You know, you have to put on the happy face and be like, everything's gonna be okay. You know, and I think as a mom, that's a natural talent that we have because we're trying to fix everything. Like, we're trying to, like, we want them to feel loved and have success even over ourselves. And I think that's a natural habit, but how I do it is I remind myself why we're gonna win. So I remind myself how bad I want it. And therefore, I know, like, and I don't know if it's a woman thing, I know how bad they want it. So as far as my spouse goes, even if I'm struggling in my own belief, in my own issues that I got going on, I realize that if I share that in the sense of like, I bite back, I'm sassy.
I need to
in
vent.
your words.
Yeah.
Because I love that word. If I become really sassy or irritable, or because these things aren't happening,
Right.
I actually have to like flip a switch because I used to just talk about all the bad things that were happening in my life and like thinking, oh, here's my partner, and we share this together. But it's really bad on their mentality.
Yeah.
And so instead when I do that, I actually go back and I read my goals, but then I go tell them everything that I feel about them is amazing and why we're gonna win together. And so I'm really wanting them to feel inside that my belief is in them and we have conquered things before and we're gonna get through this together and this is what our life's gonna be like. So I'm talking more about in the future tense of like, it's going to be amazing, and I'm using a lot of feeling words, or this is what we're going to do, and I'm trying to paint the picture of why we're going to win, and I'm using past successes because of it. But I do the same thing with the agents. So like they'll do something, like the smallest thing. We have a brand new agent, barely making phone calls yesterday with him, but because he went to a training and then he practiced prospecting a guy name and number. So I praised that guy like crazy, the fact that he even was willing to open up his mouth. But then I gave him the same traits that he has because you were willing to act on that, because of your people skills. This is why you're going to have amazing success here. I'm so proud of you for being able to do that. But then feeding in his head of why he's going to win based off what he did. You know, and so I do that with my spouse. I do it with my children. I do it with the agents. But you have to feed your belief too. And the best way I can do it is by reading good books, surrounding myself by whether it's the podcasts or any extra. I've been following a lot of like empowering women stuff and just really feeding my own mentality that way. So I have something in there to believe on, and it's not just fake me giving out.
I think that one of the things that we have to all realize is that we influence the way our spouse thinks more than I think we think. And so here's kind of a situation that we went through recently, is that Deanne had a really high level of stress about some certain things that were going on in our life, and I had no problem. It was like, it wasn't bothering me, it was just like normal, like everything was cool. But over the course of multiple conversations and her at a level of worry, she actually sold me, whether she knew she was selling me or not, she sold me that it was stressful. And so I actually started taking on that stress and going through whatever grumpy moods and whatever attitudes I have when I take on stress.
And it was worse.
It was worse, right? But then she came back around, and the other day, when she saw me going through that, she actually flipped the whole thing around and edified and, you know, believed that it was going to be okay, even though when originally she was the one who was feeling, maybe we can substitute the word empty in there, right, about the possibilities of how this was going to work out. And she came back around and she actually sold me out on how it was going to work out. And that influenced me also, and I felt really good and better after that. So I think we have the ability to influence our spouses a lot more often probably than what we think that we're actually doing. So here's kind of a process that I go through, because I kind of think I realized that like I have that ability to influence Deanne very easily, and like when things aren't going right for me, I realize that that's not how I want it to stay. So I do try to flip that communication a different way, and then I try to separate myself from her and release my stress when I'm not around her, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Everybody has their own way of releasing stress, but I think if you go and you release that stress away from your spouse, you're able to actually do the things that can change the direction of what's going on when you are around them, right? So for me, just being alone, and I can release the stress, right? Lifting weights or something like that helps me release the really. I mean, I remember when Landy was swimming. I'm sure that had some stress relief for him, right? Whatever it is, you got to find out what that is that you can release it away from your spouse so that you can somewhat. I mean, it's almost like if you're empty, it's not necessarily what we're talking about, right? We're talking about like you're not empty. It's just there's something else in there.
You're
right?
exhausted, I think. Is
Exhausted. Well, yeah, you have nothing left. You have nothing
You
left in the
transfer
tank.
that in another way.
Yes,
Yeah.
you have to go re-energize yourself in a way and then come back re-energized.
Right.
A lot of times. Okay. That's kind of how I felt. And I don't know if I don't know if I go through a process of saying, okay, I got to go re-energize myself. Like I'm not like that type of person that says, I just need a break. Like that's not really, but what I try to do is throughout time, the week or maybe the month or whatever it is, I build in things that allow me to do that.
To decompress.
For instance, like I have a date with myself every week, 1 day a week, for a couple hours. I have a date with myself, and I go do what I want to do. That makes me at least feel happy or fulfilling, whatever it is. And she does that quite often too. Like she'll go out and she'll have like a Friday night girls' night or whatever it is, and that she'll come back, and that's her kind of way to kind of, process through things. I think in a way.
Okay.
So I think you got to work on trying to figure out how to build. How do you add that to an already crazy schedule? I don't know.
You just add it to
do
your
it. You
schedule
just add
and
it.
follow the schedule.
Yeah, and follow the schedule.
Because I really believe that our spouse's mentality is the #1 mentality we have to protect. And so, like, I just used to vent all the time about the business, thinking they were in the business with me and they understood. Like, it was a person that actually understood what was going on, but it was the worst
And
thing.
even though they do
right?
understand what's going on, it's actually it's affecting the performance.
Yeah,
Yes.
it
Yeah.
really does, because then he's thinking out is the bad things, and I'm the one that's holding that in his head, and I should be like, I had to like self-check that and be like, you're not building up this when all you're talking about is the people that quit or the chargebacks you had or like what's going wrong, instead of being like, look at all the cool things we're doing. We just had 2 new guests, 4 new recruits. Like instead of like really looking at that stuff and talking about it like we tell everyone to do, we feel like we can say whatever we want to our spouse. And we really shouldn't. We should always be selling each other the dream about how we're going to get to where we want to be all the time.
And a thought that I just had, which I really actually appreciate the question because it's made me kind of think about this. I don't know if I struggle with it as much in business, but I definitely struggle with it a lot more at home. For instance, like the dishes aren't done. Like that's what I want to vent about, right? So what I was thinking in my head, the thing that would serve the situation better is that if I did have something, I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing up things that like are not going well. But I think the problem is that when you bring it up and then you just drop your trash and walk away. Right?
Right.
So I think one of the things that's important to do is to bring up the issue, but maybe I already have gone through a process of some solutions, right? Like, hey, here's what I'm seeing. What do you think about this, right? And then you have a process where you're actually on offense instead of defense. You know?
Right.
But if you're feeling like exhausted like all the time, that means you might be doing something right. Because you're maxing out, right? I mean, there's nothing left to say. When you go to bed, you're passing out, and that's it. Shut out.
Right.
The book says that.
Right? I mean, that happened to me. Like, when was it? I slept for like 12 hours the other day.
Yeah.
I was just like, I almost like ran off the road driving down to South Jordan at 6 o'clock in the evening because I was just like, I'm so tired. I get there, I make it through the training, I drive back, I walk in the door within a half hour, I pass out, I don't wake up for like 12 hours.
No joke.
She was like, I don't know if you were mad or what, but I was just like, boy, I feel good now. When I woke up. My back was sore from sleeping for so long, but still, I felt like, okay,
Right.
like I must be pushing myself to the limit. So
So a weaponized thing that I think you guys have, and this prior question kind of leads into it, is that you guys do is we found out that as we've hired agents, and quite a few, that people give up on themselves so easily. You guys have developed some skills or some talents and weaponized the ability to help people realize their worth or dreams, or at least to stay in the game longer. Any tips or helpful information on that?
I think one of the things that I've just now sort of do and I don't really think about it anymore, but maybe I do think about it, is like very quickly I can see kind of what people, I feel like I find their strengths pretty quickly. Like I'll find out if you're like a tenacious, a hard worker, if you're persistent, if you're a loving, caring, intelligent, whatever it is, right? Whatever your kind of major quality traits are, I think that I see that pretty quickly because I've dealt with so many people. I'm nowhere close to like as good as like where I hope to become in that area or where some of my mentors are at. But I think I've just kind of gotten to a point where I start seeing that, and just based off of just like working on myself and trying to learn and develop, the guys who are really good at identifying what those people are good at, they also get good at connecting with them in those areas. So they talk about those things, and they pour that belief back into them based off their traits, and that person feels like there's some sincerity behind it because they actually believe that about themselves too, right? I think there's a surface area where we all kind of doubt, maybe I'm not that good at that or whatever, but deep down I think we know what our true strong character traits are. And if you, when communicating with people, can kind of identify some of those things and play at that level, I think that translates into kind of what you talked about, that
Generating belief or
Yes.
or more longevity.
more longevity.
So identifying the genuine traits and letting them know, but then I think the other big thing that we're good at is painting the picture of what they're going to get out of this business.
Okay.
The actual value. And when I say painting the picture, they should be able to see it. Not just saying, oh, you're going to get to make money, but like, what is it going to feel like when you get to hang out with your kids in the middle of the day? What is it going to like, and actually from just our conversations, whether it's in the Fast Start or out in the field training.
Not just painting the picture, but actually using verbiage in a way that gets them to paint their own picture.
Right. So I was just going to say that because while we're field training in the car, we're asking those types of questions. It's not just always, what did you see me do? This is what we do. But really like, so why are you really in the game? Like, what is it that's so important to you? Or tell me about your kids. Or you get to see them light up when they start talking about certain things. And that's when you know it's a trigger for them. And then you're going to then identify the important things for them and then paint the picture of what it's going to be like when they actually have created that success here. And get them to actually participate in that. So they're able to tell us, what does that look like for them? Because once they start visualizing it, they bought into it. They bought into their fact that they're going to have success here. You know what, the girl that you were talking to yesterday when we were in the meeting after the meeting and having her talk about, it just reminded me so much of me in the beginning. Like, not succeeding was tough for me. Like, I never ever had the possibility in my mind that, like, I was going to quit this. And I know a lot of people are like, like, giving up what I gave up to do this, I felt like there was no turning back. Like, that was my only chance of success in life, and I gave it away. So now I have to figure this out. Like, I have to figure it out. And it wasn't like, I was never questioning, like, can I do this? I was questioning, like, how come I can't do it fast enough?
Well,
like,
she's
it was
like,
just figuring that part
if a
out.
dummy like Chris is doing it somewhat, I'm sure I can do it.
But it did help me because he was
I'm giving
able.
hope to everybody.
Yeah. He's such a hope maker.
You are an inspiration.
Well, you want to come off as like the perfect all the time, but sometimes like I catch myself in the process of screwing up, and I'm just like, I should just let the screw up finish the rest of the way, because then it shows that like, okay, there's no perfection here, right?
Right.
Because it's great when they watch you get a no. Like, that crap happens. Not everyone's going to get yeses, but something he did that was great for me in the very beginning was helping me to identify what I really wanted in my life, because in our jobs we never do that. Because it's not even an option. Why even think about it?
Yeah.
You're not like sitting at your job going, oh, spending time with my children and I'm gonna make all this money and I'm not gonna have to work after 50. Like, I mean, seriously, you're not thinking about that at your job because it's not a possibility. I saw this meme the other day and I wanted to respond to it because it's like me thinking about how things are never going to change and I'm still gonna have to work forever. And like, it was like this horrible picture and I was like, but it doesn't have to be, but that's how
Right.
people view it in their job. Because it's this never ending, I'm not going to get out of this and I'm always going to have to work like this. It's never going to get better.
Right.
And here, there is that vision that I do have the potential to get better and I can make those things happen. So it's helping them realize that.
So balance has always been something that's very important that we've always been striving to achieve and maintain a balance. My question
There is
has
no
to
balance.
do.
Striving for
We're
it.
striving. Okay, we're striving.
My question is on when you identify and set priorities, how do you protect those priorities? So like, oh, let's say we have a minimum standard or we want to accomplish these things in this area of our life, say it's in the business. How do you protect those priorities when an emergency or certain things come up and it's like, boy, I really could use your help doing this thing tonight for the family, or for maybe it's a church group that needs something, or a service thing. How do you protect those priorities?
So I'll talk first, then Deanne can kind of soften it up. There's
Thanks,
not a
Deanne.
whole lot of emergencies that happen when you prepare the right way. Okay, so some of that is about really dialing out together as a couple, what are we actually going to do this week, and then taking on the personal responsibility that it's going to get done. When there are going to be things that come up, there's going to be kids that have to be taken care of, there's going to be weird stuff, whatever unexpected stuff that happens, but those things get minimized when you actually prepare in advance and you actually have a game plan. Sometimes you need to have a game plan for what happens if there's an emergency. Like, how are we going to process through this, right? So the more stuff that you prepare for, the less actual emergencies there are, because you actually have a game plan, right? I mean, we could be like in a house, or we could be in a building, and is it an emergency when the building catches on fire? Yeah.
Yes.
But is there like a process and a thing to go through when there's actually an emergency that goes down that makes things safer and more manageable without people like dying and stuff like that? A lot of times, yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
This is life and death.
Right? This is life and death.
I know.
Okay. So, anyway, so I think the more prepared you are, the less actual emergencies that you have. But also, I think sometimes you have to get to really decide what is actually going to be an allowable thing that we're going to go put into emergency status, right? I mean, there's all kinds of examples that you can use. Like, I don't know, there was something that happened like where the school ended up like losing power, so they let all the kids out in the middle of the day. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, they're just gonna all of a sudden let kids out in the middle of the day and expect, like, how are people gonna get there and pick them up if someone works in Provo? Like, how are they gonna get all the way up here to pick their kid up with a 1 hour notice or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that happens, so you gotta make adjustments, and we all know that. That's one of the great things about being flexible. But I think what happens is, in business, people abuse the flexibility. So when there's not one of those situations, when there's not an emergency, there's not something that you need to be flexible, then you better freaking have your working, right? I mean, you better be taking care of the things that you need to take care of. That way you have the flexibility to take care of the emergency. So the more that I mess around with the time that's supposed to be allocated for a certain task, and I don't do what I'm supposed to do, then the harder it is to actually make it work out. And it's almost like I'm looking for an opportunity for an emergency to come up because I don't really want to do the stuff, or I'm not doing the stuff I'm supposed to do anyways. So one of the questions that we had before was, how do I, when I'm in family time, how do I not think about business, right? Something like that, right? I mean, I think that's a tough thing in general. I think if you're an obsessive personality, most successful people are, because they go all in, they do all this stuff. It's tough to shut that down. But I think when you give it your 100% in the area that you're supposed to be giving your 100% in, it actually allows you to be able to do these other things without guilt. I mean, I think a lot of times people, they don't give their 100% in business, so when they're family, they feel guilty about the business. Then when they're in business, they feel guilty about not giving their time to the family. But when you give your 100% here and your 100% here, in the end, that's all you can really do, right? I mean, what else can you do above 100% in with what you have going on? So I think what you've got to try to do more than anything else is give it your all with the time and the opportunity that you've allocated for that area, and then you won't feel as bad when an emergency comes up, and you'll actually be like, okay, I got to take care of this, and it won't derail you as much because you're all in when you're supposed to be doing what you're supposed to be doing anyways. I don't know if that even makes sense, but
It does make sense.
Okay, good.
I would actually agree with everything he's saying. the thing that helped me, so even when I didn't have a spouse, because that crap happened all the time, and I guess I never was like, oh, I wanted to be in balance, because it was never gonna happen.
Oh, for
and-
sure. So it's that pursuit of balance.
Yeah.
Right. It's that pursuit of balance.
But definitely with a spouse, it is easier. But I always put myself back in that situation, and it is really about planning, and I commit to the schedule. So one, I committed when to making my contact, so I don't feel like, oh, I didn't achieve that, because I had to make that time effective, because there was no going back. I wasn't going to get the time, because the time that I schedule with Mason doesn't ever get interfered with. So like, even, I don't care if it's an appointment and I had to do this appointment, there's no one, they're not gonna move the appointment, I'll tell them I can't do it. So I'm gonna hold the family time that I blocked out as the most important, like my phone, I'm not even gonna bring it. Because it is about the quality time, and I found for myself, because if I could give Mason shorter time frames of quality time, where it's complete focus on him, we were doing activities that he liked, I was spending all my energy on him, he didn't feel like my mom's never home. Because he still got to see me more than when I was home, but not paying attention to him.
Right.
You know, because I'm exhausted. And just leave me alone, or let's watch a movie, or not spending time with me. So I scheduled family time first. That was the first thing that got scheduled in my calendar. And then my business hours got scheduled around those important things. So when something does come up, like, you're going to have to make the decision, and just like me, I know she's going to edit that, I'm sorry. But just like he talked about, you have to decide before what is going to be consistent of an emergency, because he's always been very active in his church, but they came to the terms when he was building the business that, like, when stuff would come up, they had already made the decision on what's really an emergency, what do I need to drop things for, and what I don't. They came up with that idea, just like we tell our kids, say no to drugs before you get asked about drugs. Like, so you have to come up with what that really looks like. And when some things do happen and plans have to change, they'll just change. But, because if I had an emergency, my son ended up in the hospital, I'm not gonna be like, I'm sorry, it is not family time. I'm gonna go to this appointment. So that probably wouldn't happen, but that did happen a few times. So like, my son was at his friend's house, and he got smacked in the face with a fence, broke his glasses and glass in his eye, right?
Oh, no.
I'm teaching in the Mozart, it's Wednesday. I'm like teaching a class, and he's called me twice, my mom's called me twice, like I'm in the middle of teaching this big group of people. And like, even my mom's message, hey, listen, I know you're training, I'm gonna take care of this, because the people around me knew that there were just certain days that it didn't matter what happened. She's like, but we're in the hospital and they need your permission. And so I had to like excuse myself from the meeting and say, hold on, I need to take this phone call. But I had to leave and go do that. But then I handled that and I came right back to training. Those emergencies are gonna happen, and then I went to the hospital to go get them. But like, those are going to happen, and you just do your best. You're never gonna have it perfect. It's never gonna be balanced. It's never going to feel like, no, family time is family time and business time is business time. Sometimes they bleed in. But a lot of what he was saying, max out the time you have, and then I never have
We've
to go
gotten
back.
so good at it that you don't even know the crap that happens, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like this emergency or that emergency, it just seems like there's no emergencies, never anything that we have to deal with. That dude's walking around today with like some kind of brace on his leg, like, because he hurt himself. Like, dude, you know you can only get injured during this block of time, right? No, I'm just kidding. That's not how it is. But so one of the other things is, what I've realized that I've been able to do too, and Deanne also, I think, is what he knows that I plan my schedule, most of it for the whole week. And usually for me, like, you ever asked me to try, like, it's like Monday morning, have you ever asked me to try to do an appointment Monday afternoon? Most likely the answer is what?
No.
No, right? Because I've already booked something in that time, right?
Yeah.
So Mason, very specifically, this is a guy who never wants to commit to anything until a couple minutes before it's time to go do it. It's just like something, he's developed this ego about it, right? Like, oh, well, that's tomorrow, we'll just talk about it tomorrow. And so I've already let him know, listen, you need to let me know when you got something going on 3 to 4 days ahead of time. Because I promise you, I will put something in that block of time. And then when you ask me to do it, that answer is going to be like, I already planned it. So I am actually forcing him to realize that if he needs something from me, he has to communicate with me in advance, right? And I don't know if your kids have that personality where they just let you know last minute about everything. I mean, even on like signing permission slips, right? Like he wants to come in the morning and wake people up before he goes to school to sign like a permission slip. And I'm like, dude, like you get a permission slip, what you need to do is leave it out on the table the night before with a little note. And when we get home, we'll look for what's on that table, and if it's there, we'll sign it. So it's helping him also, although he doesn't accept it, but it's at least there to start pre-planning and preparing for what you want to have done down the road. I think most people don't do that, right? The employee mindset requires you not to do much pre-planning.
Right.
You wake up, you go to work, you just start working, punch out, you go home,
It's the
and
same thing.
you don't do anything again about it until the next day when you punch back in. I mean, it's typically it, so.
You seem to have mastered this, and I so have not. When we talk about emergencies, I don't know that they're emergencies, but I feel like I do not have control of my schedule. I feel like my life runs me, and I jump from what's the next crisis to the next. And I don't think that's unusual. I think that's like a normal, typical working mom. What's the next most important fire to put out?
Yeah.
And I hate that feeling because I've chosen this life. I want to be a business owner, and I want to be a mom. So I've got to just embrace it.
Gotta get organized.
How did you get to that point where you felt like you were in control of your life instead of your life pulling you every way?
It took me a minute. I still am not great at it. So
No, that's not what I want to hear.
but I think what helped me is making a decision. So I just made a decision of what were the important priorities, and I wrote down the things I need to do. So it was about me staying organized, so I felt on top of it. Because there's still times that I'm just like, oh my freaking goodness, there's so much stuff I still have to do, and I forgot about half of it, and I'll just do whatever is in front of my face today. So I try to actually sit down at least a couple times a week, and we try to do this as a couple too, at least twice a week, to figure out, our family life, financial, on our business life, right? Like what's coming up, what do we need to do, those types of things. But he's gonna laugh at me, but I have a bunch of to-do lists, like all over.
The time.
And so I create these to-do lists because I love checking things off the list. It makes me feel accomplished.
Well, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist.
Right.
Right?
And so the best thing I do to keep myself on track is write down to-do lists and then schedule them in my calendar. And so when they go off in my calendar, like I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta make this phone call. And because it's always the little things for me. Like I told this client I would call them back, or I need to follow up with this person, or like there are people in the team, right? Like Scott's like, oh, did you call this person? Or Clarissa's like, did you call this person? Rick's like, did you call? I was like, no, I forgot about all of them. But
let me put those in my calendar.
I know. So it's like, because you're not only leading your family of lots of different people who want you to do lots of different things, but then you have this like team and all of them want you to do something for them. And so I just had to get good at organizing it and scheduling it because I forget about it, and it's when I forget about it that I feel that anxiety or that chaos.
I think I'm not great at judging time either. Like I think I can get more things done faster than I really actually can. So then I'm always behind. I'm always running late.
Something the podcast taught me a lot with a guy that we follow is stop overcommitting. So now a lot of times I'll put it back on the person that's asking me to do something. So then I don't feel as bad because it's actually managing my anxiety too. So like when they're like, hey, can you just, I was like, yes. Sometimes I get super overwhelmed. I'm going to put it in here. I'm just going to need you to keep asking me or keep reminding me to make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks, but I will get to it as soon as I can. And I don't commit to a time. I just say, I would love to help you as soon as things clear out, but just keep reminding me. I'll write it down.
That's a good idea.
So I almost put it back on them. Even my clients now. Hey, I'm going to write this down, but for some reason it doesn't happen. Can you call me in a week? Like, and if you don't get a message from me, I'm most likely going to have time to do it. I just need you to call me. And I'm almost putting it back on them if they didn't call me back and something didn't happen, because that would happen all the time to me. And so I stopped overcommitting, because that was a big problem for me, because I was just like, I can get all this done, but you can't.
Well, you want to help everybody and take care of everything, but we're one person.
So
I try to delegate it.
So here's kind of like an idea about this, and this is a little different subject matter, but I think one thing is train the fire starters to stop starting so many fires. Okay, I think also as an individual.
How do we get Keanu to quit breaking his glasses?
I think also, yeah, I think, well, also train, what I mean by that also is not everything is a fire.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to pull a fire alarm on certain things all the time. And I think that's one of the biggest things is when we react to what someone feels like is a fire, we actually train them that that's an emergency that you need to let me know about every single time.
Yeah.
And in reality, it might not really be that big of a deal. And so I think that's one of the things also for ourselves, stop creating so many fires, you know? Like, we throw a lot of fuel on the fire, no matter what's going on. And we do it internally because we get worked up about it and we think we need to solve it, which then spreads to the other areas that aren't even having problems right now. And then also I think another thing is really good, and this is, you know, I tell Deanne to say this a lot more than she does, but use the word no. Like, no. I'm not coming home right now. But try to figure out a way to do it where they don't associate no with you don't love me, right? Because that's not what it means. Mm-hmm. And so you got to try to figure that.
I did set boundaries at the home life. So like, and maybe not boundaries, but like standards, or just like a really like a schedule. Like, so Mason knows certain days it's just a no-go. He used to call me all the time, so I'd be in the matchup and he would call me for everything, right? I'm like, call me if you need me, call me if you need me. When I was first going out, I felt this guilt of like not being there. I get these phone calls all the time. Can I get a popsicle? Like, I'm in the middle of a flipping appointment. Like, use your best judgment. Do you want a popsicle? You're home alone. Go for it. Like, but like, I would leave the appointments all the time and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, this is my son. Oh, I'm so sorry. And like, then I just had to put like standards, like, don't talk to me unless like, and I give specifics. The house is burning. You broke your arm and the bone's sticking out. Like, I was like literally writing out like when to call mom. Because it's not like he wasn't like this kid. I mean, he's 12 years old, right? Yeah. So, and he was like anywhere from like 10 to like 14, but I was like, stop calling me because you like want to go outside, or like, or the TV channel changed. Change it back. I'm sorry. Like, it was always about the DVR or something. And I was just like, I'm working, dude. But those things, we talked about what were the appropriate times to call me on the family life, or how to get a hold of me, or you just need to text me and I'll get it into it between appointments. And I will try to respond to you.
And he's doing so good because right now we're having like
now he knows.
Right now we're having like an internet issue because we put the internet into a room behind the sound panels with all the other equipment, and it's not reaching the entire house like before. Dude, you guys know, 17-year-old without internet.
Oh, that's bad.
It's like it's the apocalypse is about to happen.
Yes.
But he's done such a good job with like not calling us and saying internet's not working, right? And talking to us about it when we kind of, because that's not a fire, that's not a big deal. Even though it's kind of like a mini crisis in his own world, I think he's now processing what's there. Here's another thing. How about this one? So I taught him very early in our relationship to do his own laundry, right? So he's like 12 years old, doing his own laundry, and I think he might have done some of it before, but never at like laundry, it's on you. Like, we're not doing any of your laundry ever. You got to do it. And she still does it every once in a while, just a little bit here and there, but it's really his laundry. So once we taught him to do laundry, the thing that we forgot about was he probably wants to do his laundry on the weekend when we want to do our laundry. So now we're fighting over like laundry. Like,
it's my turn.
And listen, if my laundry's in there, I don't want you to take my laundry out and ball it up and throw it into like a hamper too, right? So we have to go through that process. So now he has specific days when he is to do his laundry, and he has to get them done in those days, and he cannot violate the days that we need to do our laundry on, right?
Regardless if we're doing laundry.
Although there are times,
laundry days.
although there are times where he comes forward and he says, "Hey, can I throw a load in?" Mm-hmm. Of course, right? But it's that kind of, we're now on the same page, and we've been for a couple years now on the same page with what actually needs to get done, and that we need to be able to work around each other and not just expect my laundry's not done, so mommy's going to do my laundry, like, right? You want your laundry done, and we want you to have your laundry done. So not doing it's not an option either. You cannot be wearing the same clothes for same underwear for like a month straight. That ain't gonna work either. So,
but a lot of it is just about expectations to not only him but my family. Mm-hmm. right? Like, so my whole family, they don't ask us to do things on certain days that we set expectations or certain times. Like, it's just something that is, they just don't even ask because they already know that we've set the groundwork. This is what we're doing for the next 5 years. This is what it's going to be. We appreciate all your support. We love you
Get
all.
your mom there.
So like, and that's helped us because it was always like that. And maybe not so much for him, but my family is very close. I mean, we were spending 3 or 4 days a week
That's a
doing
lot.
something, right? Some barbecue, someone's having a birthday party. I just got invited to 3 more birthday parties in the next week and a half. Can you be there, right? They all book them around our times, but I already booked things, so no.
I was like, at one point, I was
He
like,
hated
how
it.
the hell does anybody get anything done around here? All you guys doing is hanging out all the time.
Because you work during the day. But like, but
That doesn't seem like enough hours to get things done in this 40 hours a week.
We did end up setting expectations for the whole family and what this business really meant, but why it was important to us. So why this business is so important to me, and these are the times I cannot dedicate to any of you. I love you. It's not that I don't, but this matters and I have to do this in order to succeed. And you'll all thank me later.
Yeah.
Like, it was just more of setting those expectations so I had less fires or less feelings of guilt to not getting to everything.
One is always that, don't you own your own business? Can't you do what you want? Yeah, and I like to keep it that way.
Yeah.
So I gotta choose.
That's totally where their brains are at.
Yeah.
So I gotta choose to do this now, so that I can keep it like this forever.
But if you can have the conversation, I can't remember who I was talking to in the office about this, but you have the conversation with them regardless, and you hope they respect that. And most of them do if you let them know how you feel.
Mhm.
So it can't come from a place that I'm so upset at you, but a place that like, this is what it means to me. And most of the people in our life want to support that. They're not trying. They don't even know that they're doing it. They don't
Yeah.
even know that they're tearing you down or why you're doing what you're doing until you talk to them.
So we appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming over. I hope this was valuable for you. I think I got a lot out of it. So,
Yeah,
It
that's
was.
good.
Good.
You
all
guys are awesome. Thank
We'll
you.
see you guys next time we see you.
Awesome.
At the top.
All right, see you at the top.